This is a select fire Stryfe. This is what a select fire Stryfe can do. So how's it going, everyone? My name's Rowan and I'm the one who came up with that select fire Stryfe. A while ago I built this. This was the first full auto, fully mechanical select fire Stryfe. It had a little selector switch that lets you change between semi-auto and full auto. And it works like a dream. Only problem is, I used a lot of parts of other blasters. There's a Proton in there, there's a Vulcan in there, a few other bits and pieces, very hard to replicate. So I built this, the second select fire Stryfe. Now this one I set myself a challenge. I said, no more parts of scrapped blasters. So I stuck to generic parts, Lego parts, an off-the-shelf gearbox for one. Lots of fun. So this one works wonderfully as well. I also added an extra little vanity feature. So not only do we have single fire, we have full auto, and we also have a burst fire. I'm just going to take you through a quick breakdown of the internals of this blue one. Now, you should have already seen the orange one. I'll put a link in the description for that. The blue one, fairly similar. A few different variations, same basic principle. Oh, and of course, burst fire. Alright everyone, as you can see here, this is my original SFS. I've just got it kitted out all tactical right now. I just wanted to go over a couple of little things on this one before we move on to the second one. So let's take that out. I like the drum. This one has a funny tendency to drop that drum actually. I think it might be something to do with this aftermarket release catch here. As far as I can tell, none of the stock Stryfe internals are at fault here. It might just be something to do with this. Anyway, so sometimes I accidentally drop that 25 round drum. Anyway, so if I'll just come to the back here, there's been a couple of malfunctions with this unit in particular. This piece here, this is the real problem in this blaster. This has twice come loose, the little shaft inside it. Getting that to stick, getting a coupler to stick this shaft to this shaft, and with the speed and the torque that they go at, it's just been coming loose every time I've glued it in, no matter what adhesive I use. So 3D epoxy, eventually that gave out. So I've had to take extreme measures here. This piece is Plastamake. Plastamake is used a lot in this build, and I used it yet again here for this third version of the coupler. What I did is I actually took the soldering iron. Imagine this is the shaft, right? Took the soldering iron, put blob of solder on the end, cooled it, pricked at it with the iron to make 4 little spikes. So like kind of like a, how do I say, a spiked head. Did that on both of these shafts, and then put Plastamake, formed a Plastamake sausage around that. So at each end here, there's little spikes actually digging into the structure of the Plastamake itself. If this doesn't hold out, I don't know what will. There was also another issue where the pinion, that shaft, the pinion shaft also came loose. I think I just super glued that one in, so that was kind of my fault. It's been put in with 3D epoxy, that could also go. So the main problem in this one has been the shafts involved with the gearbox and keeping them stuck in place. Now the second one solves this problem. So let's bring out the second one. This is it. The second Select Fire Stryfe. Now this one, as you know, I like to keep it configured with this Modulus stock. This comes off the Modulus Recon Mark II. I like this little stock. It's not that good for shouldering, but for firing from the hip, it's awesome. And I could even keep this in a drop leg holster, and the stock isn't too long to get in my way. This is a Blaster Smith UK, extended battery tray cover. It's been 3D printed, and it allows me to hold 3S LiPo, much like a regular Stryfe actually. See, the other one needed that big ugly PE Hue box. This one, just here. That's because of the different gearbox I used. You'll see it in a second. So if we come around to this side, you can see the fire selector switch here. It's got 3 different positions. This is single fire mode. This is burst fire mode. This is full auto mode. Now, you might notice that this piece here is actually the stock magazine lock from the Stryfe. I reused it as the fire selector because I was trying to not to use parts from other blasters. Okay, moving right along. We're just going to take off the stock. Let's take out the battery. There it is. So you can already see the gearbox and the motor from this side. So some chopping was required in there. Okay, all the screws are out. I just cut that out because you didn't want to see that now, did you? Oh, Jesus. Yeah, this one's also a little tricky to get open. There we go. Put that to the side for now. So as you can see, similar enough internals to the first one. Also again, worker flywheels, brass dart guide. I just like doing that on every one of these because it's much less noisy. So I've just brought the camera around for a better view. This is the internals of the second SFS. So the trigger, much like the original one, and the trigger spring just flew away there. Come back. So much like the original one, hope you can see that all right. The stopping block is a little bit different on this design. It's now an actual extra piece of lock that's been cut up and glued onto the side. This has to do with clearance, keeping the fire select mechanism clear of the actuator arm and all its workings. This spring just came from Bunnings. It's a nice fit for the area where the trigger spring would normally go, if Hasbro included it on a stock Stryfe. Actuator arm, much the same as the original modification I did. Pusher, very similar to the original one. The front piece has been extended a bit longer than on the original one. And also the baffle here that guides the dart up and forward, that's also had some extension put on it, just so we get that extra few millimeters of clearance. That way the dart doesn't become caught at the bottom lip of the pusher here. And that's just a way to extend the pusher even further to get the extra millimeters we need in order to get the darts to the flywheels. Now, the rack is actually a Lego piece. This Lego piece here pretty much hasn't been modified, it's just been glued on. Pinion is also a Lego piece. This Lego piece, it's been drilled out in the middle here to fit onto the shaft, and it's had about half the teeth taken off. This crescent moon piece pushes in this micro switch. That prevents the pinion stopping in a position where it's down and still engaged with the gear, still engaged with the rack. The gearbox is an off-the-shelf model. Here is what it looks like unmodified. Obviously I had to take one of the shafts off. This is available from electronic shops or available in bulk quite cheaply on eBay. It's from a robotics Arduino kit. It's a very simple little gearbox, 48:1 reduction. Comes with this little stock 130 motor. It's not very good. On my one, I replaced it with a Rhino right here. The stock gearbox just solves a lot of the problems I was having with the printed gearbox on my original modification. Mainly what I was talking about with the shafts, getting everything aligned. The pusher check switch has been relocated to the back here, rather than up here on the original. Okay, round to the side of the blaster now. This is the fire select mechanism. Here we have it, single fire mode. Trigger goes in. Trigger comes back, it gets stopped. It doesn't have a chance to push the micro switch and start the gearbox. Burst fire position. Trigger comes in, hits the rubber pad. The rubber pad here temporarily deforms, just the tiniest little bit, and the trigger is allowed to just glance the micro switch for just a second, enough to cycle the pusher a few times. In the free position, trigger just comes all the way back, pushes down the micro switch as long as you hold it down, automatic fire. This is the fire select sear. It's obviously been built out of one of these elbow Lego Technic pieces. Very common piece, very easy to get. As you can see, it's been modified a little bit. It's got a bit of plastic along there, plastic along there. I'll come to this plastic in a second. And some rubber. This actually comes from dart heads of Elite darts, just chopped down. A couple of them, little pads glued on there. Makes for a nice little rubber stopping pad. This whole piece has also had the ends shaved down a little bit, just so it fits in the blaster, it doesn't catch on stuff. Smooth operation. Stock micro switch here provides the clicking sound for selecting the different positions. These stopping blocks were just improvised largely. Now this is the shaft that the whole mechanism works along. This is a copy. It's just a few Lego piece, collar piece here. Elbow piece goes along like that. Okay, and this other end, this glues on to the magazine lock like that. So you select it, moves at 90-degree intervals. In this position, we've got a stopping block. So no matter how hard we push on that, it's not going to move. This position is free, of course. Also got a stopping block just to stop you pushing it back too far with the selector switch. But yeah, no problems there. This position is the problem. The elbow shape is the only shape that prevents it going backwards like this when you push on it because of this piece here. As long as everything's locked into place nice and securely, this part here presses down upon whatever's pushing in on the pad. And it's the only way to really lock it all in place so it's not wobbling around. This is Plastinate. This is the material I use for all that little white plastic you see inside the blaster. This comes in these little granules. Put it into hot water or hit it with the heat gun. It turns clear, it turns soft, it can be molded around, and then when it cools it hardens again. It can be reused any number of times. It's basically what lets me hand make these small parts and fine tune them.
Now, the only thing I'm kind of unhappy about on this is probably the burst fire. It's a little bit janky. It's not really a true burst fire. It's more of a simulated burst fire. So as I explained earlier, it's a system where there's a little rubber stopper that kind of only allows the micro switch to be pressed for just the tiniest little bit of time, enough to cycle a pusher a few times. A true burst fire would have a kind of mechanical system that guarantees that the blaster only ever fires 3 darts per trigger pull. but that system requires at least 2 more switches, a bunch more wiring, more mechanical complexity for what is really a vanity feature. However, what I do like about this blaster here, this burst fire, it fires on average about 5 darts, and the firing rate is so high that it's kind of almost like a shotgun burst. Because, you know, with a flywheel out, the darts tend to scatter a little bit. So, 1 trigger pull, 5 darts come out, kind of a grouping. That's almost a shotgun burst. That's pretty good for dealing with foes at close range.
Well guys, thanks for watching. Sorry about how long it took for this video to come out. I'm fairly new at this, learning things as I go along. And the nature of this channel is experimental nerf mods. That kind of thing takes a while. So thanks for your patience, guys. I hope to have some exciting new things ready for you fairly soon, so please stay tuned. And in the meantime, you can check out my other videos. Not that they're very good. So, until next time. Imagine your target is hiding behind that tree.